Hellraiser for Halloween. The full Hellraiser. It says something about a film when like 20 minutes in, I sat back in my chair and just went, I love the cinematography.
That's the thing about Clive Barker. Like, he's a successful author and filmmaker.
You can tell that he's very much a storyteller. It's very well paced. It has a very unique way of structuring the plot. It feels so skeevy.
Best performance in this movie is right there. Like, there's a lot of great ones. That moment is just...
And she goes...
It is pulpy as all get out. Just really revel.
Dark humor. With how good the plot is, it makes sense that this got ingrained in kind of the horror iconography of like, this is classic. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Narratives and Nonsense. We are friends talking about random and recent stories, newsworthy or otherwise. I'm Jordan.
I'm Connor.
Yay! We have all sorts of fun stuff. First things first, today, if you don't know, is Halloween. So we've got orange lights and some costumes on, or at least parts of it, for my case. I played an Imperial Han yesterday for a fun Halloween party we had, and then you are...
I'm Donnie Darko from Donnie Darko.
And, goodness, for Halloween, in maintaining with the rest of our, like, very spooky month, we are talking about the movie Hellraiser, and then we've got some random news, and we've got some holidays, and so on and so forth.
We have random news, holidays, and then we talk about...
Yeah, the meat of the podcast, all that jazz. So, starting off strong, Connor, how's your week been?
It's pretty whatever. We're kind of in the eye of the storm at work, so just waiting for it all to hit again.
Yeah.
It's a pretty easy week, just climbing and getting my new shoes broken. Got most of the way caught up to Critical Role because I listened on the podcast, so I think I'm still technically like an episode behind or whatever, but...
So the podcast are after the
yeah, it's a week after.
Okay.
I think the YouTube one is on Monday, and then it's Thursday of that week. You get the podcast version.
Oh, okay.
But a lot going on. It's all free, so I'm not going to complain. But yeah, a lot going on there. It's been pretty crazy. Shaping up to be pretty cool. So been a nice way to burn through time at work. So I'll have to find something else to do now.
That's very fair. Yeah. I mean, goodness. With Critical Role, because they do the live stream on Thursday, Monday's the video on YouTube,
and then the next
with whatever editing.
And on Thursday you'll get
the following Thursday
the podcast.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they're 3 on 1 off. The last week of the month they don't do it.
Okay,
there's usually something.
So they have a break. That's good. It gives people a chance to catch up a little bit. Yeah, just a chance, only a smidgen. Gosh, I'm so far behind with Critical Role stuff. I haven't paid any attention to the most recent campaign, but good overall.
Yeah, I'm really liking this one. There's a lot of really cool characters.
Fresh cut grass.
Yeah, Letters is great. My favorite. Him or Orem, Liam's character.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Gosh, what was this last week like? I had a really eventful week. So we... last Sunday, I put in more hours in overtime and stuff, and then got things ready to rock and roll. Had Monday and Tuesday for some work. Woke up early on Tuesday, dropped off folks. It's my grandma and then like a family friend at the airport, so they could fly off. And then Wednesday, I flew off with my sisters. We went to Wisconsin for my great grandpa's funeral, and everything that could have gone it could not have been any smoother than we were expecting. We were kind of gearing ourselves up for drama,
strife,
some inter-family strife. I know over yeah, like the Wisconsin side of my family I'm not as close with, so I just know that there's a lot of like familial politics between each other over like who gets what, how they interact with each other, and didn't really
thankfully, at least your great granddad got most of that sorted out.
Well, we didn't read the will, so
Oh,
so I think that might have a little bit to help with that. But anyway, point besides, our time out there was very fine, and it could not have gone smoother than we thought. And compared to the last couple of funerals that I've been to, which have been very, very sad because it was people that died early and unexpectedly. With Grandpa, I mean, the man was 89.
yeah.
And was not doing well over the last couple of years. We got to spend some time with him out on a boat, so everything that could have gone well did go well, and I don't have a better send-off that I would have with him, because, like, I just was not as close. So it all went very, very well. I'm a little tired from that. And then yesterday, the Saturday, for those listening, we have our Halloween party with some of our own friends, and so up late
Jordan's
drinking.
College. I just show up and I'm like, hey!
Yeah. I mean, you've got some people that from D&D and roommates and whatnot.
Yeah, the ones I live with.
That also happen to be like DU true. People, but like you actually.
But even those are your friends from college.
Yeah.
Who I love dearly. I love spending.
Yeah, I'm glad you get along with them. We're a fun crew.
It'd be so funny if I was just like a total just jerk.
You just show up and you're like, who are you people? So
spit on the floor.
Yeah, so I put too much effort into this Han outfit. The idea is it's an Imperial Han Solo, and I used to go to D&D because I would run Star Wars games. I used to go into D&D with like the full getup, and I just upgraded it over like the week and a half leading up to it, because I'm like, I don't know what costume I'm going to be. I'm going to go for an old default and just make it a little bit better than it used to. And that's where I'm at.
Fun going all dressed up into King Supers to dry ice.
Yeah. We had to get dry ice for the punch, and so we have a pirate, a detective, you as Donnie Darko, me as like full get up Imperial Han. I got to like acknowledge a very small Darth Vader because some kid was dressed up as well. That was kind of fun. It was a good time, and overall lots of like fun catching up and talking and Smash Bros and lots of drinking, lots of snacks. I got pizza because we were like, oh my god, there's so many people, we need more food. The pizza showed up right in time because all the snacks were starting to like diminish a little.
I killed those snacks.
Oh, they were.
I was the one that diminished the snacks.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, between
sweet and savory, we had some chocolate and caramel fondue and some sweet pigs in a blanket. Awesome little ghost.
It was great stuff. So
the spread.
So if that was any indication, hopefully your Halloween will be just as splendid. So there's all that jazz, and then following that, goodness, what does this next week look like? Well, for trick-or-treaters, it might be a little bit cold. Bring a jacket, layers, all that jazz. This next week, it's like 40s to 60s here in Colorado. Snow is a big question mark. Ugh. I heard that it snowed like a second while I was gone in Wisconsin.
Rebounded real quick. By the end of the day, it was gone.
Yeah.
It's more of like a flurry.
It's like, oh, look, snowflakes. Where'd they go? I don't know.
Which thankfully the slush didn't freeze, so that's nice.
That is good.
Pain.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah. And then cloudy.
Yeah.
That's basically the extent of our weather at the moment. Today's been sunny.
Overcast.
Yeah. Today and yesterday.
Yeah.
The next week will be cloudy.
The day you're hungover. It's like,
have a lot of relaxation. Yeah. So yeah, that's as far as like more localized stuff. As far as bigger things, for uplifting news, also here in Colorado, specifically down in Silverton, there was a really cool story where there were a bunch of people taking the train, and I wouldn't be shocked if my grandpa Rich is actually fairly close in communication with people that would have been on this train, because he volunteers for all sorts of railroads. He's usually like telling people about geography as you pass by the landscapes and like the Continental Divide and stuff. I mean, he loves trains. He's super passionate
bit
about
of a foamer, if you will.
Yeah, and it's something where like there's a small community of people that try to maintain those old railroads and make it kind of a scenic tourist destination type of experience. Like you don't really get to be on an old train with a caboose and everything.
I did the Royal Gorge train, like, and that was really cool.
Yeah. So down in Silverton, the folks down there on it's like the Durango Silverton line is what it is. There were 327 people on board this train, and as they're cruising along, one of the passengers ends up like flagging down the people in charge, saying like, "Hey, stop!" Because they looked across the way, and lo and behold, there was a missing hiker who had been missing for 2 days at that point. She's originally from New Mexico, that had fallen like 90 feet, broken knocked out, broke her foot, and had been trying to get attention of like whatever passersby's on the train, but she could only go so far on a broken foot, like flag people down, and then ended up like sheltering away in a small cave just to stay warm for the night kind of thing. They managed to, they stopped the train. They managed to get people in to like get her gurneyed out. Yeah. But it was this whole affair. Everybody that was on that train got reimbursed for the day because they ended up having to sit and wait and have this whole rescue effort happen like mid ride. So it became this whole affair, but it was like you never know what you're gonna find, so always keep cognizant of your surroundings and whatnot.
This perception check.
Yeah, and always be prepared if you're ever gonna be hiking. I mean, there's I forget what the movie is. 127 Hours? Yep. Is that what it is? With James Franco is in the movie, but that's based on an actual story. Like, if you're going out and you're hiking and you're going alone, tell people where you are.
Do it alone.
Also be prepared. Also go with someone. Yeah, that helps a lot. Yeah. So that was something where good news for her. We're very happy that she got out okay. 'Cause at 2 days, that starts getting real scary. And then, following that, other good news, more globally speaking, out in New Zealand, they recently elected a new member of parliament named, and I'm gonna probably butcher the pronunciation, Soraya Mason. It had a dash, so I don't know if it's meant to be like Pique Mason or if it's like a single last name. But they have a new member of parliament, which now makes it so that there is equal representation between men and women in parliament. So it's split 50-50 between the two. New Zealand is kind of a rare case of women's advocate movements, I guess would be the way I'd phrase it. Like, they're one of the first countries to have women's suffrage back in the very late 1800s. They are consistently pushing the boundaries for like going for parliament.
Like 20 years later, they had after they got the right to vote, and then like 20 years later, they had a representative or something.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. Where within the
back then,
within the couple of decades, people in parliament now are elected women officials. To this day, it's something where like having childcare accessible, having earlier leave so you can go take care of your kids, breastfeeding even potentially on the debate floor, like that kind of stuff where it's just they keep pushing the boundary for women's rights, access, that kind of stuff. And so it's just a really cool hallmark on the history of New Zealand's parliament in particular. So that was something that was pretty cool. I'm excited to see the rest of the world follow suit in some way or another. Continuing from that, down in Akron in Ohio, they have become the 11th city in Ohio that has banned any form of conversion therapy for LGBTQ members. It's something where, on the whole, it's banned in 20 different states as well as for Washington, D.C. But conversion therapy, it's definitely controversial given that it is trying to change what people like, dislike, identify with, so on and so forth. It is
based on any science.
It's very pseudoscience-y. It's something where there's not a lot of studies supporting it actually working in any capacity. And then to further push it being a kind of a harmful impact, it's something where they found that people that are either threatened with or go through conversion therapy have twice as many attempts at suicide than otherwise. So that's something where it's cool to see that kind of continuing to get
Hopefully we can get the whole
prevented.
state, the whole country at some point.
Yeah, so that's something where we are seeing big strides on that front, and with Ohio statewide, there isn't any legislature preventing it, but it's been popping up city by city.
In cities, though,
Yeah,
like,
so
taking advantage of their own autonomy.
Yeah, so like Akron's one of them, and then like
wait around.
Another one more recently was Cleveland, out in Ohio. So we're seeing more of that. That's something that I think is pretty cool, and more importantly, I would hope will continue to push us towards trying to find more scientifically backed ways of helping people, because it is something where the article that we were looking at, it references the Trevor Project is what I think it was called. It had a lot of data about the mental health and wellness of folks in the LGBTQ community, Q plus, so forth. I mean, it really was a very enlightening breakdown of by preference, by race, by like what kind of household you have or are in. Like, are they accepting of it? Are they not accepting of it? That kind of stuff. So I'm very curious to see that continue going forward. Following that, on larger news, as far as like, I mean, we have a little something green just about every week. This week,
It's not that.
What?
You don't get it. You're not cool enough. So.
I'm wearing green. We're not talking dough. So over in Canada, we are talking dough. They are putting aside almost $1 billion Canadian.
Real green.
Yeah, they're putting aside something almost it's almost $1 billion Canadian dollars. Translating it over to US,
$30 in Monopoly money.
Yeah, it's 708 million in US dollars towards nuclear energy in particular. Getting more specific, it's the first commercial small modular reactors. The idea is that by pushing a little bit more for nuclear, which is a non-emitting form of energy, then we can help further the cause of, reducing emissions and still providing enough power for everybody. Just to kind of give perspectives, France is something like a little over 80% nuclear, if I'm right. Like, most of their energy is nuclear. In Canada, it's only like 15% is from nuclear. And a vast majority, and this is true of the US, is, fossil fuel based, whether it's coal or so on, natural gas, et cetera, et cetera. So, the reason that they're putting a lot of money behind nuclear up in Canada is, there's the G7 countries. It's like some of the top dogs that all got together to kind of, they're working towards having net zero emissions by 2050. The US is a part of that. Japan, I know, is another one, so on and so forth. With Canada, while that 2050 mark is one of their goals, they have their own sub goal of trying to have 40 or 45% less emissions by 2030 than Canada had in 2005. So really pushing that mark and that boundary. And hopefully that's something where nuclear will help with that, especially since this is the first kind of commercialized nuclear project. As far as the smaller modular reactors, something where it's a little bit more potentially available than, here's a giant freaking nuclear tower.
Well, it'll be good too. There's a real dependency on oil and gas for the economy in parts of Canada. So having something else kind of back that up is always good. A little more stability.
Yeah, diversify it a little bit. So that's something else that's really cool. Continuing on green energy type stuff. Here on the US side, with the US dollar, we're putting $1 billion towards electric buses. This would provide 2,500 all electric buses for schools, and it would be for all of the states in Washington, D.C. So there's no like specific states that are getting singled out or anything. It's across the board kind of measure. And this is money that's being allotted specifically for that transportation. Right now, only about 1% of, I think the number was over 480,000 school buses in the states, are electric based. For the vast majority, we've kind of been hanging on to diesel powered school buses for quite some time. So that's a big change to try to push that boundary a little bit more into the electric side. And then by putting some money in with that, as well as there's additional funding outside of that $1 billion for the school buses. That's part of like the whole infrastructure reworking that is there specifically for new energy needs. And
wonder too, like, you have with like hybrids, they like, you can kind of recharge your battery by braking, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder, it's probably a lot more on a bus, I'd imagine.
Probably.
I wonder if they have that kind of stuff on.
I'd be shocked if they didn't, since it's a big proponent for things like hybrid cars.
Yeah. I'm curious to straight electrics. Because I don't actually know.
Well, another thing with it's to add to it's something where electrics just as a piece of machinery operate very differently than a combustion engine does. So there's a lot less like lingering power for it to like have to slow itself down.
Yeah, but I mean it's also
comparably speaking. Yeah, no, there's a lot of momentum and inertia happening. Yeah. I don't know.
All the children's.
Yeah, I haven't looked into the engineering of school buses.
Little bike pedal setups for them.
Oh, for the kids, the kids power their own bus.
Child labor.
Yeah, there we go. That's how we go green. So it is something where we're starting to see that shift to having electric buses. I also think they are a good option because they drive fairly consistent routes, and it's almost always the same routes. And,
yeah, it's easy to plan around. And we've already got it really efficient.
Yeah, and usually when it's something like school buses, you're going to have those non-operational during downtimes on the electrical grid. So nights, middays, those kinds of things. So that's something that from a like cost saving perspective, that would help a lot. There's also less maintenance involved usually with electric vehicles compared to something like a diesel or gas, or
you're not causing constant explosions in it.
Yeah, small compressed explosions in a very timed fashion with gear shift and we don't have any of that extra baggage. So that's something that's really cool. Plus, again, it's something that this is $1 billion for specifically school buses, and then there's another like $5 billion that's going again from that infrastructure side of it. So just by having more electric buses and then like charging stations to go alongside them, it's something where that kind of lays the foundation, kind of like with I forgot if we talked about this a while ago, but down in Texas, they're starting to push for like every 50 miles, there's an electric charging station, which I never would have expected from Texas, because that's such a massive state and they're very, very oil based in a lot of places in Texas. So that's something that I thought was really interesting.
I also think Texans, though, they're like, I want to do what I want. You want to drive an electric car?
I'm going to do what I want.
Speaking as someone who's been to Texas once.
Fair enough. So
I can speak for Texas. I am the official chairman of Texas on this podcast.
The man was in Canada for like the last how long? Like
Alberta,
6 years.
Texas. I have to say it. 8 years.
8 years there.
8.
The better part of a decade.
Years.
Oh man! And then the moment you leave, they start going nuclear. Good. And then following that, the last good news is with regards to organ transplants.
Not Oregon transplants.
Yeah,
please stay out of
organ, as in body function, not out of state travelers like our roommate Marcus. So with organ transplants, it's something where The US has a little bit of a problem with having enough organs all the time. For instance, the article we were looking into, it's something like a third of all of the people on like the liver wait list for getting a liver transplant. Only about a third of them ever actually do, and they have to wait a long time for it. And that demand is only expected to increase as time goes along. On a similar note, we have an issue where a lot of the time we aren't able to use organs that are donated simply because either pre-existing health conditions or in America in particular, there's the obesity epidemic. So it's something where we have like fatty liver problems. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making sure you get a good liver if you need a transplant. Kidneys are like the highest in demand organ. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of logistics that goes into
But
that.
it's really important. Like one filters your blood, one filters the bad stuff out of yours.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. It's absolutely necessary to have your organs. So,
You only need one kidney. You only need one kidney.
Yeah. So to go off of that, it's something where we're starting to see a lot of new innovations that might help with that, either by making things more available or making it so that you don't necessarily need a full transplant in order to get things back into working order. There's a lot of either cellular therapies. You also have the more mechanical stuff like putting person on dialysis, which at the moment is kind of a much more short-term thing.
It's laborious. There's a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like chemo almost.
You have to be hooked up to the machine the entire way. But one of the these are multiple solutions to try to help with keeping a person alive in the event that they need to have new organs swapped out. One of the cooler things, though, that they're talking about and experimenting with right now, it's in one of the phases for getting FDA approval, is what they call ligenesis. So this has to do with working your lymph nodes and making organoids that can help with that processing. Similarly, there's also like cellular therapy in the sense of like you take healthy cells from a good liver, you put it into the bad liver and let the good liver cells kind of go in and do a repair job. Those kinds of things where, in the case of ligenesis, that makes it so a lot of livers that would otherwise be declined for a full transplant, a 1-for-1, you take out the old, you put in the new, where you kind of need to have everything top notch for a good liver. You can take a liver that might otherwise be discarded as just not suitable for transplantation. You can take that donated liver and you can still use parts of its structure and cellular makeup to essentially go in and fix an existing liver. Likewise, depending on like the severity, and this is always a patient by patient thing, some people absolutely need a full transplant, but for a lot of people that right now transplants are the best thing, this could potentially open a door where they might not need to undergo an entire surgery, which here in the US's healthcare system can put you back like $1 million. It could be only a couple of $1,000 procedure where they take parts of a liver that they like supplement your existing liver with in order to get things back up and running. Likewise, one of the metrics they were saying is you could potentially have one liver that you end up using between 75 plus different people. So then that suddenly just opens the floodgates for the availability for that treatment. I mean, it's some super sci-fi stuff. Honestly, that's kind of how I feel with it. It's kind of like, I guess a comparison I would say is if you had like, if you remember the old X-Men movies where, Wolverine has his healing factor. It's almost like when Rogue is like dying and then started using his healing power to get herself back up to stuff. Like it's that level of almost sci-fi craziness to me. So it's really cool. It's something where, again, we are still seeing trials. So it's very small, select groups of people that are going through to try these forms of treatment. But it is on its way to being a FDA approved methodology of taking care of people is organoids and working through lymph nodes with lymphgenesis, and like it really is it's sci-fi. I love it. So that was the last of the good news. And then holidays, as you can tell from our attire, 'tis Halloween. Ha ha ha. Have a spooky, wonderful night. Stay safe, stay warm, get some candy, enjoy the tricks and the treats. Likewise, very appropriately, it is Knock 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 Joke Day. So, add to your trick repertoire with knock knock jokes. It is also Caramel Apple Day. Very fitting for the season. Caramel apples are fantastic. We had some with the caramel dip fondue apple. We also had Oreos, and it was some good stuff yesterday. It is Samhain Day, which is the old...
It's just Samhain.
Yeah. Celtic pagan holiday that All Hallows Eve kind of came about from in some ways. And then it is Reformation Day. So all those folks that remember that weird distinction between Martin Luther King Jr. and Martin Luther King, this is Martin Luther of the old ancient, gotta stick it to the church, stick it to the man day.
Translated the Bible out of Latin. Was one of the first people to do that.
Yeah, and then finally, Magic Day, because it's a fun and spooky time. Ooh. So, with all that being said, going from one thing of magic to a very different one, it is Hellraiser. Hellraiser for Halloween. So, Hellraiser.
Sorry,
for Hellraiser, I love this.
No, you're still, it's... No.
The full Hellraiser in the dark. I love this movie. It was so much fun. It says something about a film when 20 minutes in, I sat back in my chair and just went, I love the cinematography. Just the camera work. And that was 20 minutes in.
That's the thing about Clive Barker. He's a successful author and filmmaker.
Yeah.
At the same time. And it's just so insane to me.
It was fantastic.
I'm so jealous of this man.
You can tell that he's very much a storyteller person. You really feel the kind of connection with the world. You do have, in this case, there's the book that it's based upon as the source material, but it doesn't ever feel like the information is ever being jammed down your throat. It's very well paced. It has a very unique way of structuring the plot that I think it makes sense that this would be a book first to kind of play with that experiment. And then this almost feels like a refinement of that kind of thing. Unlike most movies based upon books where it just becomes exposition jump. We watched Nightbreed, and there were a lot of times where I kind of felt this felt like it was overstepping its bounds and how much they could get away with for making this movie entertaining. And with this, it felt very clean the whole way through. Again, I love the cinematography. There's a lot of POV shots and extreme close-ups. Some of it is used for really dark humor purposes. Some of it, I think, is very reflective of themes presented by the movie. It's fantastic. No, I love the cinematography. The acting is also really good.
The cast here is just knocked it out of the park.
Seriously, it's something where half of this movie you kind of follow with Julia and her perspective. And she has a lot of very complicated emotions that she has to navigate as an actress, and just nailed it. And then after that, you get a lot with Kirsty and Larry's Kirsty and Larry's actors, and between the two of them, I mean, it's like a full shift in what's going on. I mean, 10 out of 10. I loved it. I was super invested in every single one of these people and seeing where their stories ended up. And then the effects, given that this had a budget of about $1 million back in the 80s, it's actually fairly comparable budget wise to how Wreck, which we watched and talked about on this podcast, and how they kind of turned that success with Wreck. I mean, it just being very effective, and some of it is as simple as they just took footage and rewound it to make it very ethereal and gross and
Mad Max style trickery.
Yeah.
A lot of it is actually there. It was just manipulated in some way.
Yeah, it's really well done. I think between like sounds and music, you know, the auditory experience, I think sounds carry this movie a lot further than the music does. The music's there. I think
there's not a lot of it.
Exactly. It's very sparingly used.
Yeah.
A lot of it is diegetic stuff you're hearing within the context of the film, of the movie. Also add like the makeup / puppeteering / prosthetics, all of that incredibly great artistry. I actually appreciate it a lot more in this movie than I did with Nightbreed, because with Nightbreed, it kind of felt like we're just going to do all the things all the way everywhere. And with this, it felt more like a craft. It was something where it's like, hey, we're not going to overwhelm you with seeing everything. Just, I guess, you're not getting visual overload in this movie like you almost do with Nightbreed. Because there's a lot of stuff happening in Nightbreed, but you get no time to appreciate it. While with this, you get to really sit in and just observe and look at it. And I will say, you do get a sense of some of the budget. Like, some of the costumes have, I'll say very, what's the word I'd say? Like maybe tacky-ish looking, like vein work. Yeah. In some places, but it's not.
It's $1 million in the 1980s, though. Like,
yeah, like it honestly, given its age and its budget, it holds up really, really well.
That's a level of that too that I do think is somewhat stylistic.
That's also fair. Yeah, because there is a
caricature-y, I guess. Yeah,
there's also an ethereal presence status of this movie that
I'd say the big one is
elevated.
The oversell animation they used at the end. Like, that's the really chintzy, like, but
yeah,
what do you do?
Yeah. That's something where nowadays we have the luxury of having, you know, edit and post VFX. So you can do whatever you want with CGI.
Particle effects and
yeah. Back then, you gotta get fun with your film strips.
Yeah. You're physically manipulating them.
Yeah. So, that's, as far as the making of this movie, I really do think it's genuinely great.
If you like The Thing at all, you'll really get into this one.
Yeah. Similar level. Little bit of a gore warning. There's some pretty potent things.
It's not like Saw gore, but it is gore.
No, it's not. What's the? Really, like, it's not torture porn. It's
body horror. David Cronenberg. Yes.
Yeah. I will say, torture and porn are kind of a theme of this movie, but it isn't. It's not Saw in that. That's the reason you're going into this movie.
It's really extreme BDSM.
Yes. Yeah.
Is what I would say.
It's such a good movie. So, plot stuff. Now is the time. Get out of here if you want to go in spoiler free, which I highly recommend. I really liked it a lot. Get out. Shoot. Fly. All right. Plot wise, I love how different this movie goes about.
It's such a subtle, like, slice of life thing. Just a couple moving into the husband's brother's, dead brother's house.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird opening.
Yeah. The movie has, you kind of follow along with Frank, who's the uncle in this story. He's he's a perv. He's kind of a dick. He's an asshole. Like, it's something where you get to learn about some of his like sexual escapades with his brother's wife. And, at some point, he ends up finding this little puzzle box, you know, he buys it off of, he buys this off of some vagrant, some street merchant.
I always like to think he had a depraved Indiana movie in there somewhere.
Yeah, this full off-screen adventure to find this mystical puzzle box that
choking himself or something.
Yeah, and this puzzle box supposedly it will. It's otherworldly, and it will unlock pleasures like no man has ever experienced before. And he's like, yeah, I'm down for some otherworldly pleasure. Like, I don't really care about, you know, sex and stuff on this plane. And he gets like fucking torn asunder, just chains into his body, just ripped into pieces. You kind of watch as his corporeal form is just shredded, and then you kind of see them like put some of the pieces of his face together-ish, almost like its own puzzle. Yeah, it just brutalized. So then we get to his brother and his wife moving back into they move back into this home, and
they move into his home.
Yeah, into Frank's home. So as they're moving in, Julia reminisces on some of their little cheating escapades.
And Julia in general is quite cold towards Larry, her husband.
Yeah.
It's a very awkward situation.
Yeah, it's something where she's either not happy or not satisfied in this relationship. He's not a bad person either. Like, Larry's pretty chill. Like, there's no like big red flags or anything.
Yeah.
But it's something where she's clearly not getting enough. And, at some point in this moving process, Larry ends up cutting his hand.
An exposed nail, I think.
Yeah, just
a mattress upstairs.
Yeah, on one of the doorways. It goes through. It's deep enough that they're going to need stitches.
And he's got like hemophobia, so he's all like,
Yeah, he's about to pass out. He's like, dude, I'm not doing so good. Oh, God.
When he shows it, she's in the same room that Frank was when he opened the box.
And got torn to pieces.
He starts to bleed on the floor.
Yeah, Larry's bleeding. The blood was very...
I'd say it's very Hammer.
Crayola.
If you've ever seen the old Hammer pictures, they had that real red Kool-Aid blood.
Yeah.
Christopher Lee was in one of them. They did a Dracula.
Yeah.
A remake, and Christopher Lee played in that. But it's the good.
It's the real bright, like, this could be like acrylic paint blood.
It's not dark red.
Yeah. So he bleeds a little bit on the floor, and it just gets sucked up into the floor. Editing wise, it looked like what they did was they pushed it up out of the boards, and then they just rewound that footage. Again, the editing. It's small stuff. It's small stuff, really clever usage. I love it a lot. So, she and him go to get him to the hospital. We, however, as the audience, are staying in this room as we get to watch this bloody, monstrous mess of a human recorporealize with bones and flesh.
First, it's just his heart.
Yeah.
Just a little heart.
Yeah, and then brain and stem and ribs. Just piece by piece.
It's a rat at one point, kind of help him out.
Yeah, and it is brutal looking, and it feels painful, is the way I'd put it.
Yeah, very much like the transforming into a werewolf, where it's
or even like The Fly with Jeff Goldblum kind of thing. It is gnarly, and we come to learn that this ethereal coming together of personage is Frank Reborn, I guess is the way I'd phrase it. Gone full zombie mode. Just looks awful. And in maybe I would say a lesser or more traditional horror movie, this is the monster that goes out and starts murdering and killing people. However, in this movie, and again, why I think I like it so much, it's this takes this very dark, twisted turn where Frank he's
really weak at this point.
Yeah, and he comes across Julia. Julia comes across him and is just like, oh my God. And he's like, no, don't look at me. Like, it's awful. Like, please don't. Hey, so the blood on the floor, it brought me back. I'm back now.
More.
We need more. If you get me more blood, maybe I can be like back again and we can be together again. So you get this kind of twisted Beauty and the Beast type of story where she's like, you know what? Okay. Yeah.
It's like, it's a real reversal of it because she's like, yeah, I'm going to make you into a monster.
Yeah.
I want myself too.
Yeah. So she goes full femme fatale, starts like luring men in just off of the street, just some random people that are looking for a hookup. And at first she's not quite committing to it. And then the dude's a piece of shit and it's just like, oh, you're gonna fucking change your mind. And she's like, yeah, you know what? Let's go upstairs really quick, and just bashes him in with a hammer. Frank's just standing there, just kind of like, I'm ready to do stuff. Hey, get out. Let me do my thing. Drains him. He's starting to get pieced together a little bit more at a time. With each kill, he gets more physically present. He has a little bit more involvement. And
he kind of starts looking like the anatomy drawings where you don't have any skin.
Yeah. That's a great way to put that. So eventually we get to this point where the movie kind of shifts its focus from Julia kind of going on this murder spree on behalf of Frank within the house and just letting him. And we shift over to the daughter, Kirsty, who has been having these night terrors, thinking that her dad is in trouble, that he's gonna die. She's super worried about him, keeps calling like cold sweats in the middle of the night. Her boyfriend is there, like trying to be supportive of her, like, hey, are you okay? What's wrong? That whole thing. And every time, like the nightmares get worse and worse. So it starts off with her being like, oh my God. And then it's her like in a panic calling in the middle of the night. And then eventually she just like knocks on the door and is just like, oh my God, Dad, you're okay. That kind of thing. Kirsty ends up keeping an eye on the house for a little bit and sees Julia lure some random guy. Yeah. And it's like, oh, there's like a scandalous thing. She goes to investigate.
Kirsty really doesn't like Julia. That's also pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
Vibes.
So, Kirsty goes in to see what's going on. And as she tiptoes up, this is something where thematically, I love the fact that we kind of have a little bit of like a narrative connection of sorts between Frank and Julia's experience and Kirsty and what becomes the Cenobites kind of working parallel with one another, where we have the same POV shot of her going up the stairs and going over towards the door that is Frank's abandoned room, I guess we'll call it. And out is the person that one would assume that Julia is cheating on him with, but he is just gnarled looking. It's messy. It's gross. He's withered in some ways, begging like, please help me. And she like almost grabs his hand to like pull him out. And then Frank just full force walks out and just grabs him, pulls him back in, finishes draining, goes from there. At this point, it's something where Kirsty ends up like learning, no, this is Frank and he's still a skeevy piece of shit. And Frank is kind of hitting on his niece and like, come on, come to daddy kind of thing.
That's his big line.
Yeah.
Come to daddy.
Come to daddy. And she's not having it. At some point, she finds the puzzle box that was in the room. Now, Frank had warned Julia earlier, like, hey, don't touch that. With Kirsty in the room, she ends up grabbing it, and he's like, whoa, wait. You good, bud? And then he died. So Kirsty ends up like grabbing this puzzle box and just yeets it out the window like, haha, fuck you, bitch, I'm out, and books it.
Slick move.
Yeah, but it like great distraction. Yeets it out the window, runs downstairs, picks it up on the way, and just keeps running until eventually she passes out from just trying to get away from the whole affair. I mean,
obviously you can't really go outside because
yeah, you can, yeah. I mean, the man's literally just dripping blood, basically. So, she comes to. She's in the hospital. She's not exactly sure how she got there. There were some strangers that like saw her pass out. They're like, oh my God. And she has her little puzzle box. She kind of plays with it a little bit and ends up solving it. Suddenly a wall in the hospital opens up, and it's like we get a glance at demented Narnia as she steps through, and she encounters the Cenobites and gets chased down by one of these very monstrous looking creatures that is just some really cool looking puppeteering. There's a lot of like back and forth flashy editing to really nail in the dread of her almost getting like pinned down by this monster. The whole 9 yards.
This one's the engineer.
Yeah.
It's credited as.
Exactly. So, eventually it's something where, she gets captured by the Cenobites. It is brought before the horror icon himself, Pinhead, the hell priest in charge of this whole thing, who kind of explains their deal. Like, some people call them angels, some people call them devils. We're here for just messing up people's days. Like
your soul.
Eternal torment. We're gonna tear your soul to pieces.
Put it back together, do it again.
Yeah, and she, very cleverly is just like, hey, do you know a guy named Frank? Because he's here, and I can lead. Yeah, I can lead you to him. I'll lead you to him. And they're like, look, we're hunting down a guy named Frank. Yeah, lead us to Frank. Show us Frank. And she's like, all right, yes, sir. Haha, absolutely. I don't want to be like tortured for the rest of my life. Haha.
Eternity, my man.
Yeah, exactly. So, she takes off. She's got the puzzle box. She goes back to the house, and it's in the midst of this where, again, she's still very much worried about her dad. She walks in, and it's Julia and Larry and her dad Larry, and they're like, hey, look, you can put this whole wretched business behind you. Frank's upstairs. He's dead. You don't have to worry about it. And she's weeping. She's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay. I thought you were. And as she keeps hugging him, eventually she starts to notice that like his hairline has a little bit of like blood red happening. And Larry ends up saying, come to daddy. And she goes, oh shit.
Which kudos to Larry, the actor, like playing this. Like,
oh my gosh, it's so good.
It's so palpable.
It feels so skeevy.
Best performance in this movie is right there. Like, there's a lot of great ones. That moment is just.
Yeah, it's very plot twisted in a great way, and it's completely carried by the actor, I would say. Like, the writing has to do with it, but if that performance didn't carry through, so she goes upstairs, and there's her dad's dead body on the floor.
Sans face.
No face, no skin, because Frank has mutilated him and is wearing him.
Buffalo Bill on him.
Yeah, he's wearing him as if he was his own skin, whatever.
It's a really smart way to save some budget.
Also true. So at this point, it's something where Julia on the way up the stairs, Larry, Frank, as Larry, goes to stab Kirsty, misses, stabs Julia, and he's just like, you know what? Blood is blood. And Julia's like, no, please, you don't have to. And he's like, I want to live. Drains her just bone dry. And is going up to go hunt down Kirsty.
He has a ridiculous knife. It's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. So, when Kirsty is upstairs, it's something where she's like hiding away from him in different parts of the house. You know, there's a lot of storage and random things in the different rooms. Yeah, yeah. And she's narrowly avoiding him. And eventually it's something where she manages to get the puzzle box, gets the Cenobites involved. They show up.
Back in the room.
Yeah, our wonderful room with a dead Frank.
Larry.
Dead Larry with Frank wearing his skin on the floor. And they, like, in one of the cooler sequences, take him back to hell by just shredding him to pieces, basically. Super bloody and gory.
You get the great line right before it happens. Jesus. What?
And just explodes.
Which I didn't know. Apparently that was improv.
Yeah, that was made up by the actor. Again, props to the actor for just rocking it. Because originally it was supposed to be, the line was supposed to be just like, fuck you and call it a day. And yeah, Jesus wept. It's such a like thematically good line. So
anyways, now we got a different prop.
Now we have a bunch of Cenobites. Now at this point, the boyfriend finally shows up. I don't remember what his name is, but he's there for Kirsty, and she is on the run from all of the Cenobites. However, she's got the puzzle box and figures out that she can like kind of put it in a different configuration and just boop, send them back to hell. Get out here. Get out here.
Just as much as she can open it.
Exactly.
Because they made that deal earlier for Frank, but it wasn't really it was a verbal agreement, maybe.
It's more like guidelines. You know,
so they're like, yeah, now you're soul.
Yeah, well, you got us, Frank, but we never really agreed to not torture you. So now's our time. We're gonna get you. She sends them back one by one, except for Butterball
falling apart. So
yeah,
Butterball.
Yeah, Butterball, the larger fat Cenobite with glasses, ends up like, ends up getting just like wrecked by falling house pieces. She and the boyfriend manage to just barely get out of there. They end up trying to burn the puzzle box, and while they may have escaped their fate, the puzzle box endures. It makes its way back to the vagrant sales merchant.
Cut back to the same point of view of the earlier in the movie, and you hear once again, "What's your pleasure, sir?"
Yep. As we get to see another sale transaction. Yeah, a completely like different tangent. We also get to see the vagrant kind of like haunt Kirsty is the best way I put it, which is very interesting. Not really explained in the movie. Might be something in the books. I have my own little wish list because this movie has a lot of like implied world building or function and stuff like that. And I know there are other movies. I know that there's an entire, book series, storylines, things. Yeah, comic. Like, there's a lot of world that has been explored even before this movie came out and then after this movie. So, that's something where plot-wise, I'm kind of curious as to why Kirsty has these visions and thoughts and feelings about her dad, how, like, her deal plays off, but that's something where like her deal with the Cenobites, that can very easily be just and the world may never know, like,
she's very much in Frank's positions now, is what I always took.
Yeah. Again, that very cyclical connection and mirroring parallel between Julia with like making a deal with Frank and then her making a deal with the Cenobites. Julia's deal ends up backfiring. Frank ends up getting her. I kind of saw it as this movie ends with a kind of wrapped bow, but there is that potential of, okay, eventually though, the Cenobites are going to get her too.
The Cenobites didn't get stopped.
Yeah, they just got delayed a while.
Them and their influence are still there.
Exactly. And then, the other thing is, like, why and who and how is this puzzle box be where it is, and the deal with the vagrant who doesn't feel like a Cenobite himself, just feels like a dude that happens to be in the know that is also a little bit off. He eats crickets at one point.
He turns into that giant bone dragon. So like, I don't think he's a person. I think he's just like a mimicky kind of familiar thing.
Yeah, but bone dragon versus Cenobite, like I'm not sure.
That's what I mean by like he's like a familiar.
Yeah,
of the Cenobites.
It's very cool. It's very
lesser demon.
It's a little bit cheesy how the bone dragon like shows up and just like fucking flies off.
Because you have these like whacked out BDSM looking guys, and then like weird bone dragons, and it is pulpy as all get out. Like
and honestly, with how good the plot is, it makes sense that this got ingrained in kind of the horror iconography of like, this is classic. So yeah, thematically, I can't gush enough about the like the kind of alluded parallels between the two, and it's kind of a funny thing where one of them is trying to do something good, the other one is just clearly shit intention type of thing. I also really like there's some dark humor in the movie where, and this is from an era like with Nightmare on Elm Street, where horror didn't like take itself super seriously. Like there's a lot of like silly, jokey kind of stuff, and they didn't do that per se, but there are some moments where like there's some like random noise and someone goes, "Oh no, it must be a rat," and then it has a visual cut to a rat pinned to a wall, like bloody and dead and like twitching. Like just
they really revel.
Dark humor. Yeah. It's very funny, and there's definitely a sense of like a curiosity kills the cat, don't meddle in affairs that you can't comprehend kind of vibe, cosmic horror-y ish, but
beings from another dimension that you don't quite comprehend.
Yeah, and the idea that some people think they're angels, some people think they're devils, but we are what we are. We're just here to have a fun time.
They're angels to some.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really like this movie. I'm curious to see how the rest of the movies and now show and whatnot turn out. I don't know if anything will live up to my expectations given how clean this movie felt. I really did like this a lot. Yeah.
I think definitely the next movie is the song.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Like on par?
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. So, we'll watch that probably at some point. Not next week, though. We have a whole different thought. You know, we're at the end of October. We're gotta get out of spooky, scary, what have yous, and get back to, I don't know, something fun, something weird. We're gonna go out there. We'll see what there is. But that all being said,
and we will see you
later, next time, eventually.
Next week.
Anyway, everyone have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care. Good luck.
Keep it spoopy. Keep safe.